On behalf of the Hawkins family, I want to express my appreciation to each one of you for taking time to come to today's memorial service and pay tribute to my father's life. Regardless of how difficult it might be, I wanted to speak today because I want to celebrate the legacy of my father's life, the man who I am named after. Even though he goes by Harvey and I go by Gene, there was a time in our lives when he was Big Gene and I was Little Gene. And I was always proud of that. And having followed in his professional footsteps, there's probably no other person in the world that he has influenced more than he has influenced me, although my sister may want to argue with me about that, the way siblings often do. We are both products of his and my mom's raising. And while I could spend hours talking about his influences, I know that I just have a few minutes. However, for those that don't know me, I am a professor, so it may seem like I'm talking for a lot longer. Last month, the good Lord sent down an angel dressed in Arkansas red to call my father home. That angel got up close to my father's ear and said, "Harvey, the Lord is calling you." And my father, as has already been mentioned, who rarely took action without giving it serious thought, responded, "Well, I need to think about that." So the angel left my dad to ponder the call. I'm not sure how many more times that angel visited. It was several. Cindy mentioned 5. But on January 10th, that angel, still dressed in red, returned for the last time and said, "Harvey, the Lord is calling you now." And my dad responded by saying, "I'm ready, but what does the Lord's call sound like?" And those of you that know how the Lord calls those from the state of Arkansas know that that angel began to say, "Woo, pig suey! Woo, pig suey! Woo, pig suey! Razorback, come home!" And with that, my father left his earthly body. He left behind the weakness and the pain, and he went on his way to heaven to meet Jesus, where right now I suspect he's up there telling jokes and sharing thoughts of the good times with his mother, father, brother, and others. And while it has been difficult for those he left behind, today, right now, at this very moment, is a time for celebration. I mean, how can you not get excited about someone meeting Jesus? But that's not all there is to celebrate. For during the 85 years and 16 days that my dad walked on this earth, he made it a better place. My father was not a talkative man. Blair made reference to that. In many respects, he reflected the sentiment of Paul, who said, "I would rather speak 5 intelligible words to instruct others than 10,000 words in a tongue," which is Paul's way of saying, engage your brain before opening your mouth. But when he did speak, my father was worth listening to. And today, I want to emphasize 5 lessons I learned from him that are well worth the words he spoke. Blair touched on several of those briefly a moment ago. But those 5 lessons are to think carefully with wisdom, to give your best effort with integrity, to think of others with kindness, to be a good father with love, and to love your wife with all your heart. In fact, I would dare say that if the people of the world could learn these 5 lessons from the many that my father taught me, the world would be a far, far better place than it is today. Let me start by talking about how my father taught me at an early age to think and to analyze. He was a true engineer and trained me to be the same. You could call me a junior engineer. He thought about everything. You know the saying about optimists and pessimists and a glass of water? To the optimist, the glass is half full. To the pessimist, it's half empty. My father would look at that same glass, take a very long look, give it some thought, and then say, well, that glass is twice as big as it needs to be. There wasn't a problem I ever saw my father face that he couldn't solve. He taught me to look at something, break it down, and figure out how to improve it. He taught me to look at things not as they are, but how they can be better. But thinking was only half the equation. He also taught me the need for wisdom. For it is not enough to just think. You have to have the wisdom to know how to use the results of your thoughts. My father's wisdom embodies the psalm that says, "The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice." The second lesson I learned from my father was to do my best. He was not a man that just went through the motions. If he took on a task, he did it to the best of his ability. He did not take shortcuts. My father did the best he could, and he did it the right way. Having followed in my dad's footsteps in the traffic engineering field, I was fortunate to have received many emails from fellow traffic engineers over the last month, people that we both knew, that we call friends. And there's one common thread among those messages, that my father stood on the side of good. Many called him a Southern gentleman. Several said that he was a man of integrity. Others said he was a man that did it right. God could have been talking about my father when he said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." The third lesson I learned from my dad is to show kindness toward others. Up to the very last days that he could speak, he was thinking about others. You all know that his birthday was on Christmas. And on this past Christmas morning, which he had his last birthday, the first words out of his mouth did not relate to his pain or his needs or even his birthday. Instead, when the nurse came in the room and woke him up, he said, "Merry Christmas." My father saw the good in all men and all women, and he cared about them. I can easily see my father among those to whom Jesus said, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And the fourth lesson I learned from my dad is the value of being a good father. My father cared deeply about my sister and I. He taught me many lessons about being a father, and I've tried hard to live up to the model that he set. To give you just one example of his living legacy, my father and I participated in the YMCA Indian Guides Father-Son program when I was young. He was Big Cloud, and I was Little Thunder. I still remember the great times we shared together at campouts and meetings, and it left such an impression on me that I wanted to share that experience with my daughter when she reached age 5. So I brought that same YMCA program to College Station. We don't have a Y in College Station, still do not today, but we have a YMCA, now it's called Adventure Guides program. My daughter and I did that for 5 years, and then my son and I did it for another 5 years. No longer was I Little Thunder, I was voice like thunder. We finished that program a long time ago, but it still carries on today in College Station, with many dads strengthening the bonds between fathers and their sons or daughters. And that program would not exist today in College Station if my dad had not cared enough about being a father to do it with me almost 50 years ago. He believed the words from Psalm which say, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward." And finally, the last lesson. As Paul said, the greatest gift of all is love. And the person that my dad loved more than anyone else is my mother. I haven't been married even half of their almost 60 years, but during that time, I've tried to take the lessons I learned from my parents' relationship and apply them to my own. I watched my father worship my mother throughout their time together. He was totally devoted to her and loved her with all his heart. As the strength began to fade from his body, his greatest concern was that my sister and I would take care of our mother because he wouldn't be there to do it himself. My father was the perfect example of the scripture that said, "Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them." And at the heart of all 5 of these lessons is love. And so it comes as no surprise that one of my favorite scriptures reflects these lessons I learned from my father. And I believe that if there is any one set of scripture that best describes my father, this is it. It's from 1 Corinthians. "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres." You see, in a nutshell, that was my dad. The impact of these lessons from my dad, along with the many others that I don't have time to talk about today, can best be described by the closing that one of my fellow professors in civil engineering at Texas A&M puts at the end of every email he sends out. That saying says, "You will find that when you die, that part of you that you gave to others does not die with you." Well, my dad gave a lot to me, and it lives on in me today, and I'm trying to pass it on to my children. Friends, we have much to celebrate today. And so in closing, I want to honor my dad by saying how grateful I am for everything that he did for me in my life, and for all the lives that he touched during his time here on earth. He was truly a blessing. He lived a good life. He lived a long life. He lived it for right and for the greater purpose in God's way. And I look forward to being reunited with him someday, where once again I can tell him that I love him. So let us leave today with a smile on our face, knowing that we are all better people for having known my father, Harvey Eugene Hawkins, Sr. Thank you.
I'd like